Guys, history hasn't always been great, alright? There's been a lot of questionable things, questionable people, and questionable families, alright? Here are the top 10 scandalous families from history that did unspeakable acts. Starting off this list, in our number 10 spot, we have Cleopatra and Ptolemy VIII. We'll head over to 47 BC, at a time where ancient Egypt was a little different. We often think of Cleopatra's end, but the beginning of her life was quite hectic as well, even for the royal family. Cleopatra had two younger brothers who both ruled with her after the death of their father, Ptolemy XII. Ptolemy XIII initially ruled with Cleopatra. They were a historical duo, but they soon became rivals. Ptolemy wanted the throne to himself, so he attempted to seize control of Egypt. This led to a civil war in which Cleopatra was exiled. However, after Caesar defeated Ptolemy's army and restored Cleopatra to the throne, Ptolemy XIII drowned in the Nile River while attempting to flee a battle. Talk about family drama. I thought mine was bad, but dang. In our number 9 spot today, we have King Henry VIII. Henry's marriages were significant in the history of England because they played a major role in the English Reformation and the establishment of the Church of England as a separate entity from the Catholic Church. Yeah, a few of those family scandals ought to do it. Catherine of Aragon, Henry's first wife, he quickly divorced after she failed to produce a male heir. Anne Boleyn, Henry's second wife, who he of course married immediately after his divorce from Catherine, a little sketchy, well, she was later accused of adultery and treason and lost her head. It wasn't good. Jane Seymour, Henry's third wife, gave him this long-awaited male heir, Edward VI. Sadly, she died soon after giving birth. Next was Anne, Henry's fourth wife, whom he married for political reasons but found unattractive and divorced shortly after. He saw a painting of her before and she didn't match the image. Swear to God that's what happened. Like, what in the Tinder? This guy is absolutely insane. Next was Catherine Howard, Henry's fifth wife, who was only 17 at the time. She was accused of adultery and also lost her life. Catherine Parr, Henry's sixth and final wife, survived him for a change and went on to marry again after his death. Divorced, beheaded, died. Divorced, beheaded, survived, alright? Study that for your history test. In our number 8 spot today, we have Julia the Elder. Julius Caesarus was the only biological child of Roman Emperor Augustus. She was born in 39 BC and was married to Marcus Claudius Marcellus, but later got caught up in a series of scandals that brought shame to her family. So much so that her father actually exiled her to a small island off of the coast of Italy in 2 BC. She remained in exile for several years and her marriage to Marcellus was annulled. In 2 AD, Augustus allowed her to return back to the mainland, but she was still considered an outcast and was forced to live in seclusion for the rest of her life. This was less than 10 years after her mother had suffered the same fate. What an absolute nightmare. In our number 7 spot today, we have King James I. We're taking it back to Scotland in 1425. King James I ordered the death of a powerful nobleman who just also happened to be James' cousin. Murdoch Stewart, Duke of Albany, was the grandson of King Robert II and had served as regent for James while he was imprisoned in England. However, once James returned to Scotland, he suspected Murdoch of plotting against him. Murdoch and several of his followers were arrested and killed in Stirling Castle. King James' actions were seen as a ruthless demonstration of his power and authority, and he faced quite a bit of criticism for this harsh treatment. In our number 6 spot today, we have John the Fearless. In 1407, Duke of Burgundy John the Fearless ordered the death of Duke of Orleans Louis I, aka John's cousin. A lot of cousin rivalries in this list. At the time, of course, he was his political rival in the French court, but what is happening? The two men were powerful and influential members of the French nobility, and their feud had been building for quite some time. See, John believed that Louis was a threat to his power, and he had also insulted him publicly, which for sure doesn't help the case. Louis was ambushed and killed by a group of armed men in the streets of Paris. John was heavily criticized for his actions, and the incident even went as far as to spark a civil war in France. The conflict lasted for several years and resulted in political instability and, sadly, lots of lives lost in France. In our number 5 spot today, we have the Brutal Benders, also known as the Bloody Benders. If their name didn't hint towards it, they were a family of who operated in Labette County, Kansas in the late 19th century. The family consisted of John Bender, his wife Elvira, and their adult children Kate and John Jr. They ran a small inn and a general store that became a popular stop for travelers passing through the area. However, the family was also known to rob and/or kill their guests. Just a minor inconvenience if you want to stop in at the inn. They would lure travelers into their home, act friendly, and then completely switch on them. The family's crimes were eventually discovered in 1873, but they fled the area before they could be brought to justice. Lovely. What year was this again? I don't think they're alive anymore, thank God. Well, who knows? In our number 4 spot today, we have Fred and Rose West. We've heard of Bonnie and Clyde, but what about Fred and Rose West? Ugh. The two were a married couple who committed a series of brutal killings in England during the 1970s and 80s. Their victims were usually women, and they buried their bodies in and around their home. The couple was thankfully arrested in 1994 after police discovered the remains of several victims. While awaiting trial, Fred took his own life in prison. Rose was found guilty of killing 10 people and was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Definitely one of the worst when it comes to British criminal history. In our number 3 spot today, we have the Cray twins. Ronnie and Reginald Cray. Where do I even begin here? On paper, these twins were lavish, they had very bubbly personalities, and were often associated with celebrities and politicians. Deep down, these British gangsters were much, much more. The Cray twins operated in London's East End during the 1950s and 1960s. They were involved in organized crime like protection rackets, arson, and they took a handful of lives. They were eventually arrested and sentenced to life in 1969 for killing Jack McVitie and George Cornell. The Cray's legacy has been depicted in many films, books, and documentaries, and they remain among the most notorious figures in British criminal history. In our number 2 spot today, we have King Rudolph II. We'll do a little palate cleanser before we finish off out with big bad number 1. King Rudolph II, the Holy Roman Emperor in 1552. He was known as a collector of sorts. Some royals collect stamps, others collect zoo animals. Okay. His home was dangerous, to say the least. His castle was home to lions, tigers, and orangutans, so good luck getting 8 hours of sleep. Not gonna happen. He also liked to collect human artifacts. That one's a little bit more jarring than the zoo animals, right? I mean literally, King Rudolph II had random bones and body parts in jars, all in the name of science. Watch out for the animal droppings and the jars of teeth. Welcome home. King Rudolph II is of course quite important in history as he supported the scientific revolution quite a bit, hence the jars. You know, he also poured tons of money into astrology. He's into the cosmos and the kidneys. What a guy, alright? He's got a lot of interests. In our number 1 spot today, we have Paul Bernardo and Carla Homolka. We'll end on our least favorite Canadian couple, Paul Bernardo and Carla Homolka. They committed a series of brutal assaults and killings in the late 1980s and early 1990s. Their victims included Homolka's sister, as well as several other young women. Absolutely disgusting. Bernardo was known for his inhumane acts in Scarborough. He even had a nasty nickname for them before his true, even more disgusting identity was revealed. The couple has since been dubbed the Ken and Barbie killers due to their wonder-bred appearance. Homolka had made a plea with prosecutors testifying against Bernardo in exchange for a reduced sentence. Meanwhile, Bernardo was eventually convicted of several charges and was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Hashtag by Ken. Alright guys, that has been our list for today. Thanks so much for checking it out. I've been your host today, Olivia Kozlowski, and I will see you again soon. Bye!